Welcome to this, my second devlog, and yeah, it's late again, but I had a good reason. I might just make Wednesdays my upload days, which means that by the time YouTube approves this, Thursday is, judging by the last video, because it seems a lot simpler now to get into the 2-week flow of it all, and before I get into the actual devlog, I want to talk about something that happened very recently to do with Ashes of Creation. If you want to skip my rant about this, the timestamp will be on screen right now and in the description. I'm not sure how the YouTube chapter system works yet, but if I figure it out, I'll chop it up by chapter. I know Ashes of Creation has had a bit of a mixed reception for a mixture of reasons, but the issue that Ashes had is an issue that I'm noticing with a lot of new video games recently, especially whenever it comes to mid-budget games, and that is scope. Ashes of Creation had a lot going for it, but something it was trying to do was to do everything all at once. It was trying to develop the whole world immediately and put it in the player's hands, which, as I've been learning as I've been making this game, you have to focus on one thing at a time. And I know I don't have a huge team, so I can't really distribute people into doing multiple things at once. I'm just one guy. But even when you have a team, you really need to focus via small areas of the game at a time, get that done, get it refined, and then move on. That's not something that Ashes of Creation were doing. They're trying to do, as I say, everything at once. Also, something I don't really understand is the costs. How was it costing them an estimated $800,000 per week to keep the game running? I guess because of employee costs, which, being in California, a state with stupidly high taxes and cost of living, that wouldn't help at all. That's something else that I don't really get. It's a criticism I've had for the people who made Stormgate too, which is RTS games trying to follow in the footsteps of Warcraft 3 and StarCraft. The people who made up that team were all ex-Blizzard, and they lived in California, so they should know what a terrible place it is for making anything. Granted, I can't really speak, since even though I'm a dual citizen of both like the UK and Ireland, living in either location has horrendous tax problems. But the difference is, in my case, I'm not looking to make money. This is just a passion project for me. I don't have to sustain a business and pay employees. And if it does actually start to make money, I'm moving. I'm getting out of this cesspit and I'm going somewhere that I can actually enjoy the fruits of my labor that isn't going to tax me into the ground. Anyway, I feel like Ashes of Creation's scope was way too wide, and it became a game that, like many of its kind, was, as I've come to say, as wide as an ocean and with the depth of a puddle. And of course, the absurd operating costs required the founders to search for other forms of funding, which led them to forming a board of investors who, of course, seized control of the company, removing the original creators from their own IP, and I imagine the game's going to get cancelled. It seems very likely at this rate. You see the titles all over the place, every YouTube video about Ashes of Creation saying the game was cancelled. It just feels like these devs didn't learn the lessons that us indie devs learned a long time ago, which is working within your means. You're not gonna make the next blockbuster, so you might as well just make what's within your scope. Set limits for yourself. Stop surrendering to feature creep. And the reason that they feel like they can just get away with it is because they think that investor money is just infinite. Or maybe they underestimate how long games actually take to develop, because you have studios like Ubisoft pumping out the same dog shit year after year with a new label stamped on it. They don't realize how much of their assets and code Ubisoft reuses, so of course it can just churn out slop whenever they never actually have to innovate anything. If you're building from scratch, you don't have that. Let this be a lesson to any prospective game devs. Set a set scope and never exceed it until the scope is done. And if you reach your goals before you hit the deadline, all the better. Underpromise, overdeliver. It is a core principle of business that everyone just seems to have forgotten. But that's it for the rant. It's just something that got a bit under my skin, so I had to go over it. To the actual devlog. So the map might seem a bit odd right now. You have a third character over here. This isn't a player, this is the first NPC. And yeah, the pose is weird. I'm gonna fix that later. I'm just working with whatever animation blueprints came stock with this setup. and it doesn't really seem to have targeted the bones properly. Other than that, you can see the iron ores there as usual, and you can see a wall separating admin and adminius here. The reason for all of this is I wanted to show off my development in per player changing world states. I've added a quest system and a dialogue system that I'm going to show off how it's all integrated together. Now, I will say that the quest system is going to get rebuilt. Currently, the way I have it set up is you have the quests themselves, and then quest stages, and then each stage has an objective. But the way I've made it so that whenever you complete an objective on a stage, there's no hand-in objective. The hand-in is handled on the next stage, meaning that if you drop the items after filling out how many you need, it doesn't automatically backtrack, but it will reject you from completing the quest and make you go back and get them again. I just like the system updating in real time. So say you have 4 iron ore that you're supposed to turn in, and then you drop one, it'll immediately show that you've you lost progress in the quest. Also, the quest data assets are all built into one with no real modularity, and there's something you can do with data assets that this MMO kit does with items, to where you can add properties to an item and essentially bolt on extra features to an existing data asset. I really want to rework sort of changeable world objects to work with that, to separate them by category. Say world objects that are just meant to appear and disappear, like this wall, for instance, or resource nodes being something separate to that. And speaking of changeable world objects, they've also been overhauled a bit on the back end, mainly because of collision, but I'll go through that with the quest here to show you what I mean by that. And just to... well, let's get a focus on admin's view here. Hello there, adventurer. You're looking for a quest. If you say not right now, it just exits the dialogue. However, if you say yes, great, I have some orders that need fulfilling for the village, but I've run out of iron ore and I don't have time to collect more. Could you collect 5 more for me, please? And again, if you exit, it starts you from the beginning again. Right away. And that brings up this quest here. NPC 001 wants me to gather some iron ore. So, I can go over here, and requirements for gathering things, such as like having a pickaxe in your inventory, is something else that I'm going to sort later, but for now, you can just gather it. You can see this is updating as I'm gathering the ore. And then once I have all 5, it moves to the next objective. I gathered all the iron ore I need. I should return to NPC 001. I'll gather an extra one just to show you something. So you see, like, I know the icon still isn't there, but I've got the 6 iron ore. I talked to him. Have you managed to gather that iron ore yet? If I say I'm working on it, I'll have to go back and sort of like keep gathering. Something I didn't show actually is if you don't have the iron ore gathered and you come back and talk to him, he'll say this, but yes, it's right here isn't an option. It'll just say I'm working on it. So yes, I have it right here. Thanks so much. As a reward, I'll let you into my garden to collect oak and flax. And what that's done is that's removed this wall, and it's added in these resource nodes for oak wood and for flax. Now I'm going to bring back up the viewpoint of Adminius here just to show you. Scooch him over there. Just to show you that as far as Adminius is concerned, that wall is still there and those resource nodes are still not present. Now, there is a thing of, because admin has no wall here, and Adminius does have a wall here, he just kind of phases through the wall. I had a few options for how to do this. I'm going to bring up the Premiere example demonstrating program right now. That's right, it's Microsoft Paint. So something to bear in mind whenever it comes to your different views. Say you're player 1. This is you, you're right here. You actually don't see any other players in the world. They don't exist for you because you can't actually have 2 players in the same space, at least not over a network. So what games do in order to simulate this, and simulate is the key word here, is it creates a simulated proxy. And the simulated proxy over here is it's an NPC. It's essentially a husk in your world that is following all the directions that the player it represents is doing on their screen. But of course that can cause some forms of desync, as you saw whenever admin is going back and forth through this area. You see he kind of glitches a bit and he yeets through. And there's another example whenever it comes to sort of resource nodes. Actually, I'm going to have Adminius complete the quest just to sort of show you the resource node. And I'm also going to show you another extra little feature, because if you see, Adminius actually has 5 iron ore already in his inventory. And for him, the quest is going to go a little differently. So talk to the NPC. Looking for a quest, yes. So he's asking for the order for the village. Could you collect 5 iron ore? And it actually says, I already have the 5 iron ore. It already recognizes it in your inventory. So you say yes. It says, thank you. As a reward, you get to go into my garden. So yeah, it's taking it from the inventory. And oh yeah, and because I had 6 with admin, it's left me with 1. So that's working properly. Good. So the ability to recognize when you already have something and pre-do it is fun. It's a little bit of a quality of life thing, so you don't have to talk to the person, then end the conversation, then come back to the conversation. It's only a minor step skip, but I feel like it adds a lot to the reactiveness of the world. So here we've got an oak wood. If we cut down the oak wood, you can see that's what's left is a stump. Now you see, Adminius can now go and step on that stump. From admin's perspective, it's kind of phased in to the tree. And I had a few options whenever it came to how to deal with simulated proxies and collision. Because you see, and this isn't the same for like admin. If admin tries to walk through it, the collision is still there. Like he can't walk through it no matter what he does. Unless he chops it down, and then in which case he can join Adminius. But there's the options that I had. I'm going to come back to this for a second. So let's go back to the wall example. So I draw a wall here, one guy on one side, one guy on the other side. With the simulated proxy, I could either make the proxy just kind of stick on one side until the player had made it all the way through. And then what would happen is the simulated proxy would teleport to the other side. That is one option. It's a bit difficult to do. I'm still trying to figure out how to make that work without it sort of jittering about like it was in the live demonstration. Another thing is segmented levels. So say you have admin and Adminius, and then you have the wall here. And what happens is that whenever one of them has completed the quest, say Adminius has done it, admin and Adminius no longer see each other. So from the perspective of like Adminius down here, like if he's completed the quest, he won't see admin, nor will he see the wall anymore. And from the perspective of admin, he won't see Adminius anymore, and he will just see the wall. Now this is instancing, which is used in a lot of MMOs, and I'm thinking of using instancing for situations where like I completely overhaul an area. But for small changes, like the gathering nodes, I don't think that's really necessary. I think just letting you walk through it is honestly the better option. The other option for, at least for gathering nodes, was to never change the hitbox and make it so that it blocks movement whether or not you actually cut it down. But I feel like that also removes a little bit of interactivity with the world. Like you can't go and stand on tree stumps if I do that method. And I think it adds a little bit of a fun thing you can do where if player A goes and cuts a tree down, they can stand on the stump, and then if it's wide enough, player B comes and cuts it down, and suddenly there's a player inside the tree. I think it could add for some entertaining moments, and doesn't necessarily detract from the game that you can see players. You won't be able to see players walk through everything. It's just going to be specific changeable world objects that you can see them walk through, like gathering nodes, like those walls, etc. So with that, that's all I really wanted to show off for the devlog. I know it may seem lackluster, like, oh, all is added in as sort of like a basic sort of quest system and whatnot. But this was surprisingly difficult to make from scratch, especially considering I had to refactor all of the gathering nodes because of like how they function. Another thing as well with like iron nodes, obviously you can see them standing. This is a problem that I actually had where I had to figure out a way, because to explain how collision works in Unreal Engine, collision is universal, which means that whenever you spawn in some kind of collision mesh, like it's something that you can't walk through or something that blocks some form of action, once you've hidden the object, the collision is still there. So I have to have each player individually ignore the collision so that they can go through it. But of course I can't have everything ignoring collision, otherwise I would get a problem that I was having when I was testing, which is that on the player's perspective, they would be standing on top of the rock. But from everyone else's perspective, they would just fall through it, and then every time they tried to walk, they would sort of jitter up and down. And I wasn't particularly fond of that. So after rebuilding it a bit, I managed to get it to work as it's working now, which is whenever you want to walk through things, you can walk through them. Whenever you don't want to walk through things, you stand on top of them, or you get blocked by them. So that brings the view on the player in line with the view of that player as a simulated proxy. As for where I'm going to go from here, like I said before, I still need to rebuild the quest system. That's still my next priority. And once I've done that, I'll be working on getting a couple of basic combat abilities going and to dip into that system with a hotbar at the bottom of the screen. And then once I've done that, I can move into rudimentary combat. And once rudimentary combat's working, then I can keep going with the quest system to add in kill quests. You know, say go kill 5 wolves. And I know, at least visually speaking, it's not a lot to look at for a month's worth of work. And it's really difficult to sort of show off what the code is actually doing, because if I showed off the code itself, you're just looking at lines and lines of code. You're not looking at an actual sort of visual feedback of what's happening in the game. And these basic features are things that a lot of people take for granted in games, and these systems would be a hell of a lot easier to do if I was just doing it single player. Because if I was doing it single player, then you don't have to communicate with the server, because all of these actions that they're taking, every single one of them has to go to the server first to verify that those actions are valid, and then the server must give a yay or nay back to the player character to say whether or not you're allowed to perform that action. Otherwise, you could cheat and cause desync. You could do what New World did on release. If anyone remembers sort of the Josh Strife Hayes video on New World at its release and all the exploits that you could do, because it didn't have the server as its authority. There was a lot of actions that you could perform where the client was the authority, and that caused a lot of problems. I want to avoid that pitfall from the very start, which is funny considering I'm avoiding those pitfalls as an individual whenever a several billion-dollar company couldn't. But that's the state of independent development versus AAA, I suppose. But I think given how much work I've had to put in the back end, this has actually come out quite nicely for a month's worth of work. And given that the time limit is 3 years, I still have 35 more of these to go before the deadline. So I think I'm making some decent pace here. If you disagree with me, or if you think there's some ways that I could do some things better, I'm very interested in advice. If there's any fellow programmers out there who've worked in Unreal Engine who think that I'm doing some systems a bit wrongly, and you think there's other ways that I could go about them, just let me know. I really would like to hear about it. But thanks for tuning in. If you like this project, then please give the video a like. And if you subscribe now, in 35 months, you can brag that you were here since day one. I'll see you next time.